right, we're on to our next lecture in ecology. Actually, the first lecture of ecology, our next unit, and our last unit, the longest, but probably the easiest. All right, so intro to ecology, we're going to go over the levels of organization and symbiosis or symbiosis. They pronounce it both ways. All right, so levels of organization. I'm going to go over it a couple times. First, you start out with an individual organism. In this case, it's an elk. Then you have a population. That is all the members of one species in an area. So just all the elk. That's a population of elk. Now we're going to go up bigger. Now it's a community. A community is just not all the elk anymore. Now it's everything living in an area. So now it's the moose, the trees, the grass, this mountain lion, the beaver, the rabbit, this other tree, the owl. Everything living in the area, that's a community. Now we go ecosystem. That's getting bigger. So now it's still everything living in an area. So now the bear, the owl, this bird flying around, the trees, the grass. But now we're adding the non-living environment. We're going to add the water. We're going to add the soil, the dirt. We're going to add the temperature, the amount of sunlight, all that. That makes up the ecosystem, all the living and non-living things in an area. Then we go to what's called a biome. So you can see a biome right here. It's a large, very large. This takes up most of Canada, it looks like. A very large geographical area that has similar climate, so therefore similar types of plants and animals live there. So like, for instance, a desert biome, or you have Arctic tundra biome, you have tropical rainforest biomes. And the biggest thing that you have, the biggest level, is the biosphere, which is where all life on Earth makes up the biosphere. All right, so we're going to go over these a couple times, and I hope you enjoy it. All right, so this is the same thing I just went over. The levels of organization again. Why am I going over it twice? Because nobody ever learns it the first time. Maybe you weren't paying attention the first time. Maybe you're not paying attention this time. Anyways, all right, so we start out the lowest, one individual organism. In this case, it's a fish. Looks like an angelfish. Then we go up to a population. A population is all the members of one species in an area. So all the angelfish in the area makes up the population of angelfish. Then we go down to a community, remember? Now this can be everything living in an area. So now it's not just all the angelfish, but now it's all the eels, all the algae, all the squid, all the shrimp, all the other types of fish. Everything living in the area that makes up the community. And now going down to a larger level, an ecosystem, it's the same thing. We still have the same, everything living, but now we're going to add the non-living environment like this rock. Now we're adding the water because water is not living, but those fish and the shrimp, they wouldn't be alive if it weren't for the water. The temperature, how much sunlight. So an ecosystem is all the living organisms in an area, plus the non-living environment, the soil, the water, the sunlight. And then remember, the largest of them all is the biosphere. That's all life on Earth makes the biosphere. So everything living in the ocean, everything living on land, everything living under the land, like maybe worms and stuff that live underground, and everything flying in the air. All of life on Earth makes up the biosphere. And then remember the last one, a biome, which is a large area that has similar climate. So therefore, similar types of plants and animals live there. So for example, desert biomes, rainforest biomes, Arctic tundra. All right, so those are the levels of organization. All right, so now a very easy slide. Biotic factors versus abiotic factors. All right, so biotic factors are the living parts of an ecosystem, so basically everything alive. Abiotic factors are the non-living components of an ecosystem, but the living things depend on these non-living things. All right, so for example, so this little pond ecosystem over here, the biotic factors include this bird. It's like a stork or a herring. I forget which kind of bird that is. This bluebird, this duck, that insect right there, these lily pads, those are plants are alive, whatever plant this is. Yes, the fish, these are all biotic factors. And this plant right here and the grass, those are all the biotic factors in this pond ecosystem. Everything living. So the community, all the living organisms makes up the biotic factors. Now the abiotic factors that all these things rely on are the non-living things. So like water, guess what? Water's not alive. When you drink it, you didn't kill it. Water doesn't die. It's not alive. Also, the air, that's an abiotic factor. The sunlight's an abiotic factor. How about the soil? Is it good soil? Good soil for growing plants, or is it bad soil? So all those things are abiotic factor. Water, soil, temperature, sunlight. So living things, biotic. Non-living things in an ecosystem, abiotic. All right, two more terms for this lecture. The first one you probably heard of, habitat. So if you go to the zoo, the pen that say the polar bears are in looks like their natural habitat. And a habitat is where an organism lives or its home. So for example, a frog, its habitat is in a pond. Frogs live in a pond. They don't live in the desert. They don't live in the ocean. They live in freshwater ponds. That's their home. That's their habitat. That's where you can find frogs. All right, so habitat is where you can find them. That's where they live. The other term is called its niche. Some people call it niche. I think if you're French, you say niche. Niche. That's the role or job that an organism has in its ecosystem. So, for example, the frog lives in a pond. That's its habitat. What does he do? Frogs, they eat insects. So they're a limiting factor. They eat a lot of bugs. So they keep the population of insects like flies down, and they're also food for other organisms like snakes. So that's their niche. So their habitat, they live in a pond, freshwater pond. What do they do? What's their job? What's their role? They eat insects, keeps the population of bugs down, and they're also food for other organisms like, say, snakes or maybe owls. All right, so habitat is their home, and their niche is like their job or their role they play in their community. All right, so we're on to symbiotic relationships. I think we got like two more slides. All right, so a symbiotic relationship, some people say symbiotic. I don't know what, I think you can say either way. It's a close, long-term relationship between two different species in which at least one of them benefits. And we're going to learn three different types. So the organisms, they live together and are often dependent on each other. So symbiotic relationships, you can see right here, this bird right here that's on top of this gazelle. The same bird right here, it's an oxpecker bird, and he's on top of not a rhino, but that's a hippopotamus. Fleas on your dog, and also these little fish called remoras or pilot fish that swim right along sharks. So these are organisms that spend like most of their lives together. They're different species. Obviously, the bird and a hippo, those aren't they're different species, but they spend a lot of time with each other because at least one of them will benefit from the relationship, and I'm going to go over all three types right now. All right, so there's three type of symbiotic relationship, whichever way you like to say it. All right, the first one's called mutualism, and this is where it's thumbs up, thumbs up. Both species benefit from the relationship. So one example is this guy right here, the bee. The bee and the flowers. So the bee is going to get nectar from the flower. That's why he's there. He's there to get nectar from the flower, and then he can go and turn it into honey. So he's going to get his food. The flower, on the other hand, the bee is going to get its pollen on his legs, and then when he flies to a different flower, he's going to help pollinate that flower, so he helps the flowers reproduce. Another example are the clownfish. The clownfish in the sea anemone. These anemones, their little appendages, they have little barbs that are poisonous. They kill other fish, but clownfish they're immune to it. They don't get affected by it, so they can hide in the anemone, and no other fish can mess with them because they're safe there. But other fish will get stung by their little appendages, and then they die. And the clownfish also bring food for the anemone to eat, so it's good for the clownfish, good for the anemone. All right, the next one's called parasitism. This is where you have a parasite. And a common example is a dog and a flea. The flea is the parasite. So one of them benefits. In this case, the flea is going to benefit because it's got a nice warm place to live on your dog. And it also gets to suck the blood from your dog. So it's good for the flea, but it's bad for the dog. So a parasitism symbiotic relationship, it's good for the parasite, but it's bad for the host. It's bad for the thing that the parasite is living on. All right, so it's parasitism. So remember, mutualism, good for both. Parasitism, good for the parasite, bad for your dog or cat or whatever the parasite's living on. And the third one's called commensalism. And this is where one organism says, yes, I'm benefiting, this is good, and the other organism doesn't care one way or the other. So one example is here. This is a whale, and these little tiny little spots that you can see, those are barnacles. Those are kind of like little clams. They're like little shellfish that grow on top of on the sides of whales. It's good for the barnacles because they hitch a ride with the whale all through the ocean, and they get to eat food as the whale goes and looks for its food. The whale doesn't care. It doesn't hurt the whale. It doesn't help the whale. Whale doesn't care one way or the other. Another example are these little pilot fish or these remoras swimming next to this shark right here. Okay, it's good for the remoras. It's good for the little fish because number one, they get protection from the shark. Nobody's going to mess with you when you're swimming right next to a shark. Plus, when the shark eats something and rips like a fish apart or something, there's going to be a bunch of little pieces of food that the little fish can eat. But the shark, on the other hand, he doesn't care one way or the other. It doesn't help the shark. It doesn't hurt the shark. It's kind of neutral. So remember, mutualism, it's good for both. Parasitism, it's good for the parasite, bad for whoever the parasite's living on. And then commensalism, it's good for one organism, and the other organism doesn't benefit, but is also not harmed. It's kind of neutral. All right, so that was this lecture on Ecology 1. Hope you enjoyed it. We're having a quiz time right now, so hope you took some notes, and I'll see you next time.